Hey everyone, it's Thyworm discussing the patch notes of patch 0.2. I'm just going through the patch notes, and for each topic I will either provide you some commentary, refer you to videos that I already made about the subject, or refer to a future video that I will make soon. This video will contain a few sections which are co-op, heroes, stats and damage, bosses and NPCs, UI and general. Biggest news and main topic of this patch is co-op. I've already done an entire video on it, check the card, so everything discussed there I won't bring up here. There are, however, some first impressions regarding co-op as I was able to play a few matches. Launch day though was a bit of a mess. The server lag was huge, I didn't get in half of the time, party menu was broken, I couldn't invite anyone, and the servers were so busy that even solo play didn't work anymore. It was not a smooth launch. But that's okay. I logged on real early the next morning, found some people to play with and played a bunch of matches. There's a few options to start co-op. Either go to the party menu, invite people from your local pantheon, invite people from your own friends list, or make yourself available in a new looking for player menu, indicating that you want to party up and someone can then invite you. Also, the developers have added another channel on the Discord, looking for group, which makes finding someone else pretty easy. And co-op feels good, I'd say. It's clear who's who, I never was confused as to where I was, and as I expected, co-op is really overpowered. I teamed up with Ridanis, he had a level 19 Lucian and I had a level 28 Damir, and we easily completed a master level 29 assassination mission. Really super easy, a little bit too easy actually, but balancing will come in the future. Overall though, the co-op works fine. I've seen some bugs, like you see over here with the final wave message popping up all the time. Also quite often the UI says I'm level 1 and have legacy level 1, but that's really not the case. These aren't game breaking bugs like we saw yesterday though, with the entire EU server being basically unplayable, and I'm sure these minor things will be ironed out eventually. It doesn't stop you from having a fun time with some friends. Future updates regarding co-op should improve things like the co-op itself, the UI, fast traveling to encounters, different types of indicators and things like that. It seems good to me, and also logical features to implement when building co-op. Optimization and balancing are also future updates, just like what is described as designing fun, which is basically incentivizing people to play co-op. Let's move on to heroes. I'm happy to see that there's quite a few changes implemented for the heroes. One of the biggest new features is the ability to move and attack at the same time. I'm playing a defense mission with Anya here just to try it out. Works perfectly fine, exactly as you would expect, I would say. Also later on some Damir missions it just feels good. It's smooth, it's responsive, I think it's a great change that will really increase the pace of the game. For melee heroes, the close combat range bug is fixed. This bug caused you to miss enemies that were right in front of you, which is quite annoying on a melee character. So those days are gone now. Let's dive a bit more into specific heroes, what has changed and how that should affect gameplay. Estoc. Estoc has his F ability, the Thunder Fist, rebalanced. This ability used to do massive amounts of damage, but it would also consume all your static charges. It's quite annoying because getting those back isn't always that easy, and because that same Thunder Fist ability also scaled with those static charges, it was a pretty unreliable tool I found. This has changed. The initial damage is buffed. It's now 800% instead of 500% physical damage, which is the equivalent of 60 static charges. You couldn't even get 60 charges because 50 was the maximum, so it's a pure buff really. Also, the ability doesn't consume the static charges anymore, meaning you will have 50 static charges for most of the fights, which is great. The balance part is the decrease of additional damage bonuses to Thunder Fist using static charges. This bonus has been reduced to 1% instead of 5%. Overall though, using this ability at 50 static charges is stronger now than it used to be. The total physical damage bonus at 50 charges is now 850%, whereas before it was 750%. You don't lose static charges anymore, so I think we should just call this a buff. A pretty big buff, in fact. Marsha. They fixed Marsha's passive ability. Honestly, I'm not a big Marsha player and I didn't know it was broken, to be honest. So I'm not going to say anything about it other than that it's apparently fixed. King Witch. They fixed the Whirlwind Endless Loop bug. I've encountered this bug quite a bit while playing King Witch, who was my first character I picked. It was a minor bug, nothing game breaking, but it's fixed now, so that's great news. Muro. Muro is a champion that could do with a bit of rework, if you ask me. The changes made here are minor steps, with the harvest ability being fixed and having Muro gain 1 passive resource generation per second. My main issue with Muro is, however, that he is just a rather passive guy to play. It's really hard to die with his endless life leech ability, but he also lacks proper damage to actually be fun to play. There's some rotations which are pretty okay with the fairs and the harvests, but they have relatively long cooldowns. I find myself just mostly doing melee damage, leeching life and doing melee damage again. Muro needs a clear direction into either DPS or as a tank. I would personally love this guy to have a taunt ability, some ways to gain aggro, then lifesteal and just low DPS overall. And ideally have him deal cold damage, maybe with slow effects. That would just make him a very fun and interesting tank to play. This way Muro has a clear purpose in the game, you could utilize cold damage and you have a nice way of tanking in co-op. Lucian. Lucian no longer deals physical damage. It's weird, I know, but we can no longer use physical damage on a fire and lightning mage and do insane amounts of DPS. Seems we have to play by the rules now and actually stacking lightning damage, fire damage and spell bonus percentages. I'm happy they changed this though, because physical damage was an overused statistic. It still is, also after this patch, but this is a step in the right direction. The Mirror. The Mirror is one of the heroes I've played the least. The fixes they did, however, seem pretty minor. They fixed a damage bug which might impact people if they exploited it. They also removed the charges from his primary attack and slowed the animation speed. Basically, you can see this over here. There's no charge stats anymore in the UI on his left mouse button. However, the skill works still the exact same way. Also, easy mode has finally provided the bear stats. How could you not provide the bear stats at launch, sir? An absolute outrage. We need to know how our teddy bear performs, how he skills, what he does, because yeah, it's nice to know, but as far as I'm aware, there is no way to influence the bear stats, so it's really not all that useful having this information. Stats and damage calculations. I've done a pretty extensive video on how damage is calculated in Pagan Online. Reading the patch notes, this video is still largely valid. However, some parts have changed. I will create an updated video in the future discussing how damage changes after the patch. This also means I'm not going to discuss this section here because I want to cover this the proper way so you can use this information to your advantage. Bosses and NPCs. Let me say that I already found the boss fights quite fun most of the time. For me, it was always a pleasant surprise that there were boss fights in the game at all, to be honest, so I didn't see this as something that would have high priority. But the developers decided otherwise, and I understand their vision a bit better now. I'm not gonna go into too much detail here because the patch notes are rather clear. Furun and Kevlar have been tweaked. To me, it's more interesting what this section indicates. Changes in the patch regarding boss fights means that Pagan Online is going to put more emphasis on boss fights. The devs tell us in the patch notes they want to improve them, which is great, but I think there's a bigger idea behind this, and that is that in the future this game could steer towards more boss fights. The co-op indicates this as well, and I really like this direction. If you ask me, some of the most enjoyable moments in gaming were achieved playing together with other players, killing bosses and NPCs. Mainly in World of Warcraft, I was a hardcore raider for a while, and I can very vividly remember my Karazhan runs or killing Illidan after months of farming with our guild, or so many other moments of nostalgia that were so great because they were a real achievement and done together with other players. Pagan Online isn't an MMO in that regard, I know that, but they could still strive for the same exciting feeling, for that same rush. I would love to see raids in this game in the long run. The encounters are perfect for trash mob packs and bosses could be epic as well. There's plenty of room for strategy and mechanics for different roles and players. I can totally see this work. To me, a first step towards a bigger joint PvE experience is taking boss fights seriously. This patch indicates that they are taking boss fights seriously. The user interface. the user interface changes are something that can be best shown. And the new UI looks very good, I feel. I really like the clean design of the health and mana bar on top of your character, and when playing co-op this makes it easy to differentiate between yourself and the other player. It's also nice that you have now one point of focus where you can see your hero, your stats and your vitals. Another welcome change in my book are the battle effects, which clearly indicate that you're frozen, being slowed or any other status effects. At boss fights these can become a little bit overwhelming, especially if the boss does a lot of status abilities on you, but overall I found them rather helpful and you have a much better idea of what's going on by looking at the UI. In terms of the new card design when hovering items, I think it's great. I love the new design. It looks super neat and most importantly it's very clear. This new aesthetic allows you to instantly see if the new item is an upgrade, which base items are required and things like that. One thing that is already one of my favorite changes is that it is no longer required to click inside the loading screen to continue. Not totally sure why that was there to begin with, but I'm really glad it's gone. And reading the Reddit and Discord, I'm sure you are as well. Regarding the UI, I did notice a bug. It seems that the statistics text doesn't fit in the UI anymore. I think a developer has made a small mistake with the amount of decimals that is shown here, because there's 2 currently and before it was only 1. This is causing the numbers to be larger than intended and therefore they don't fit in the UI design anymore. Should be an easy fix. Last but not least, general changes. Unfortunately, it is no longer possible to cheat your way out of survivals and expeditions. You will have to complete them entirely, that is until the last encounter, in order for them to register as being completed. This makes a lot of sense though, and with the removal of card packs there is no real downside to this anyway. You used to be able, using the card pack requirement, to get some easy and fast materials by completing a survival by killing a single wave, but not anymore. So be it. Now we will have to move to threats for those precious crafting materials because patch 0.2 has buffed the drop chances in threats. That's a great change as well. I like the concept of threats, it just wasn't really well executed, and by this change I feel a lot more incentivized to do threats, together with one of you guys soon hopefully, to have some co-op fun and better loot. All in all, I'm happy guys. I work in IT myself, which I might have mentioned, not in games development, but I do develop several applications with multiple teams. And if you see what Mad Hat Games has put in this patch, it's really impressive. These are significant changes on multiple aspects of the game. Troubleshooting and bug fixing is not easy. Developing new features is also not easy. I think this is good to mention to offer some perspective from the development side, because if the devs keep up with a pace like this, Pagan Online is going to make big steps forward every time there's a new content patch released. It makes me very hopeful for the future, because I know what sort of effort goes into a patch like this and it is so easily underestimated. And with that we end the video, ladies and gentlemen. It was a bit of a long one, but this was my breakdown of the patch notes. Subscribe for more videos on Pagan Online. I hope to see you all in Pantheon, and don't hesitate to invite me for a game of co-op. Now that we can, I'd love to play the game with you and see how that goes. I'm usually on Discord as well if I'm not creating Pagan Online content, so I'll be happy to join. Thanks for watching, I will see you all soon, bye bye.